In this video, we're going to show you how to set up a WordPress development environment in Docker. Be sure to subscribe to the channel and check out the blog post associated with the video for a written format tutorial. So the first thing we'll want to do to create a WordPress development environment in Docker is to make a project, an empty project folder for it. And you can put it wherever you want. I'm going to put it in this code/tuts. I'm going to make a directory called wp-tut. Basically all we need for now is a Docker Compose file. So we can go ahead and create that with Vim or use your favorite editor or whatever. And you need docker-compose.yml. So I'd recommend checking out the adminer Docker page to learn how to use that. And then also the MySQL Docker page. And they'll give you instructions on how to use these images. But we're just going to go ahead and get to it. So I've got some code already set up just to save and prevent us from having to type. So I'm going to just copy and paste, but I will be sure to explain. So where is it? Okay, so we've got version 3.1, which is the version of Docker Compose that we're going to be using. And then services, this is going to be a list of all of the images or containers that are going to be created. So we've got an adminer service. This is a service name, adminer. You can change it to whatever you want, but preferably something that makes sense. And then the image that this service name will be using is adminer image. And then we're setting the local machines port 8080 to the port 8080 of the container. So if we want to get to the adminer information, then we'll go to localhost port 8080. And then we have the DB service name, where that'll be using the MySQL image. And we're going to be setting an environment variable for the MySQL root password, and we're going to be setting that to equal password. And the image provides a default user, and the default user is root. So when you're logging in or whatever, you'll be using root as the user. So we've got all this set up, and we can go ahead and run docker-compose up. And you can either use D or leave it blank without D to flag. And I'm going to do it without. So we can see that it's working. So now we can go to the localhost port 8080, and we see our login screen for adminer. So in order to log in, we'll have to choose whether we're using MySQL or Postgres or whatever database we're using. So we're using MySQL, and then the server is going to be DB, and that is because we have DB set as the service name. And the username, again, the default is root for MySQL, and then we set the password in that environment variable to be password, and then we're going to leave the database blank. And so we get connection refused because it's not completely finished loading up. So anyway, let's try again. Password, and we're in. When you're working with a database, you have to have somewhere for this data to be stored, and you need it somewhere to be persistent. And Docker uses these things called volumes to store data and other stuff. By default, Docker creates its own volumes, but they're not very user-friendly. So let's go ahead and take a look. So we've got a docker volume ls command to list all of the volumes. And so you can see some of these volumes have really long numbers that are difficult to read, and then you've got nice and simple named volumes. And so we want something like this, but we get something like this by default. And using named volumes is actually pretty simple. Let's go ahead and close out our existing project, or exit it out by Control-C or Docker Compose down. And then we'll open up our Docker Compose file, and we just need to add the volume information to the DB service, because that's the service that we need to store the data in. So we'll go ahead and do that with volumes, and then we'll name the volume. So I'm going to call mine wp-tut2 and then colon and then /var/lib/MySQL. And basically what we're doing here is we're naming the volume wp-tut2, and then after the colon is the location that the volume will be mounted to. And then we need to name or create the volume. And we do that with, at the very bottom of the Docker Compose file, we do volumes colon, and then the names of the colon of the volumes. So wp-tut2 colon. And then we can go ahead and save that and then quit. So we're just making sure everything's closed out. So Docker PSA. So we have no containers running. So now we can go ahead and start up Docker Compose again. Docker Compose up, and we'll use the D flag this time. Okay, so now we're running the this project with Docker Compose with the named volume. So if we go ahead and check the Docker volume, or actually the command to see which volume is being used by our wp-tut_db_1 container, we see that we've got wp-tut_wp-tut2. And that is a heck of a lot easier to read than this long number. Okay, so now we can finally add WordPress to our project. So go ahead and close down with Docker Compose down, and then open up your dockercompose.yml file. And now we need to add the WordPress service and image into our project. So we can do that in our Docker Compose with WordPress colon, and then set the image to the latest version of WordPress. And then we'll set the port to localhost, port 80 on our local machine and 80 on the Docker container. And that's it. So we'll go ahead and run Docker Compose up D. And now we can finally go to localhost port 80, and you get the install page. So we've got setup English, and we need our database name, username, database password, database host, etc. So let's go. And we haven't actually created a database name yet, so let's go ahead and do that. If you go to the localhost port 8080, you can create a database, and I have to log in again. So username, root, password, and login. And then create database, we'll call it WordPress. So save, and WordPress has been created. So now we can set the database name for WordPress, and then username again is root, password is password, that was already set. Database host is going to be DB, or the name of the service, and then you can set your prefix to whatever. I recommend changing that. But all right, you have made it, so we can run the installation, and you're ready to go. Because Docker destroys all of its containers when it shuts down, you'll need a persistent wp-config file. That way you don't have to keep recreating it every single time you start up your project. I'm going to create a WordPress directory inside of our wp-tut project. That way we can store all of our WordPress related stuff inside this folder. In order to grab the wp-config.php file, we can actually grab it from our running container. We've already set it up and everything, but however you get your wp-config file, I don't care. Just get it and put it in the WordPress folder. So ls WordPress, and I see we've got this wp-config file. So we're good to go to move on to the next step. So now basically what we need to do is, instead of using a volume, we'll want to create a Dockerfile. And we have to use this Dockerfile to build our image, our WordPress image. So let's go ahead and create a Dockerfile in the WordPress folder as well. So WordPress Dockerfile. And then we're going to use from WordPress. So we're still going to use the WordPress image, but we're going to do a little bit of customizations. Basically what we're doing is we're copying the wp-config.php file from the directory that from our local system and move it into this var/www/html directory in the container. And that's all we're going to do. So once we've saved that, we need to use that Dockerfile instead of the image from the Docker registry. So inside our vim inside our docker compose.yml file, instead of using image:\wordpress, we now need to use build, and then we're going to build the Dockerfile inside the WordPress directory. So we'll go ahead and save that. And I believe that's everything. So let's go ahead and now in order to build this image, instead of using just Docker Compose up or Docker Compose up -d, we need to use this -- build flag anytime we make a change to the Docker files, any of the Docker files. So we use that now. And we're almost done. The last thing we need to do is add the plugin code. So where are we going to put the code for our plugins and themes? And that's super easy. All we need to do is open up create a plugins folder in our project file. So make directory plugins, and then that's where all of our plugin code is going to go. And in order to set that up, we just open up our docker compose.yml file, and then we add a volume in our WordPress folder, or in our WordPress service. And that will mount all of the code from our plugins folder into the plugins folder in the container. And then we're good to go, and all we need to do is shut down and restart Docker Compose. So now all we need to do is test that it works. So we can go ahead and do that. And all we need to do is install a theme or a plugin from our WordPress admin area just to see that it works. So let's go ahead and first ls, and we see that there's no bbpress. So if we, I need to refresh. If we install buddypress or bbpress and then do an ls here, we can see that bbpress is here. And if we add wp supercache, let's go ahead and install that. And then do an ls, and we see that wp supercache is now installed. So whether we now we can edit our code in our terminal, and it'll show up in the admin area. And then you do have some permissions issues that you got to work through, but it's really simple. All you do is just a chown and a chmod or chmod command to edit your permissions every once in a while. And it should be good to go for WordPress plugin and theme development. You do the same thing with themes as well. Thank you for watching the video. I hope you found it helpful. Be sure to subscribe to the channel and check out our website truthseekers.io to see more written format tutorials and other helpful things for programmers.